And really what the third eye is it's the top end of the spinal nerve. And that's the way we regard it with spinal breathing, that we're just beginning at the root, at the perineum, and come up through the spinal nerve to the center of the brain and then forward to the point between the eyebrows. So, yeah, the third eye is naturally connected with all of that. It is part of it. It is the top end of it. And as ecstatic conductivity awakens, it really awakens through that whole distance, that whole spinal nerve, and then outward in front of us at the same time. A lot of people view Kundalini as a progression of stages up through the chakras, beginning at the root and then the sex chakra and the navel chakra and the heart chakra and so on. But the experience has been, with many people awakening this, that's really not the case. It's not a progression. It's an instantaneous event. That, in other words, if you're awakening in the lower area, you're also awakening in the upper area. Uh-huh. At least you are if you're doing the practices in AYP. So the ajna, or the third eye, is really the control center for that once things have awakened. A person who has an awakened ecstatic conductivity and has done it the way we do it, where it's everything at once and radiating outward all at once. Just raising the eyes a little bit or bringing the attention up to the brow, point between the eyebrows, it stimulates that whole thing from root to brow and then going out in all directions. Mm-hmm. So the third eye has a great importance in that, and people also tend to consider the third eye as something that you see with, like you do with your regular eyes.
Yes.
And that's really not true on the physical level. But on the level of intuition and seeing knowledge and truth, and perhaps even, things that aren't seen or recognized by other people, sort of a clairvoyant sense, if you will.
Yes.
Those are characteristics of an awakening third eye, not, having an eyeball growing in the middle of your forehead. But we have to think of things, we can only think of things on the level that we think about things, right? So until we find out what it really is, for some people it's an eyeball in the middle of their forehead. And that's okay, they should learn meditation and spinal breathing, and then that vision will expand into a real experience.
Yes. Fantastic. Well, that's great. We've covered most of that. And so where does this take us? Does this take us now to the inventory of practices that...
Yeah, I felt it was important to kind of cover those capabilities.
Yeah.
So people can see the connection points, not only with what we're doing in AYP, but maybe with other systems they might be involved in. Because all the systems are involved with trying to cultivate this process of purification and opening through these natural principles that exist within everyone.
Yes, and so, they get to see...
Now from there, the AYP system goes off and develops, these core practices and then many additional practices on top of the core practices. And, there's about, 15 or 20 of those. I forget how many are in the book. Looks like about 16 or 17 in the book. We've added some since then in the online lessons. Oh, by the way, all of the lessons of AYP are available on the website at aypsite.org. That's aypsite.org, O-R-G. And there's a support forum there. All of the books are available there. And also all of the interviews that we have done so far are available there in recorded form. But in any case, so in practices, we start off with desire, just the way I mentioned about the capabilities. Mm-hmm. You have to have a desire to undertake something before you're going to do anything. So that's really the first thing. And then the next thing we get into is deep meditation. And next after that is spinal breathing pranayama. And then we get into what are called mudras and bandhas and asanas, which are physical practices that build on spinal breathing to cultivate the awakening of ecstatic conductivity. And then we talk about tantric sexual techniques. All of these things we've covered in the interview,
Yes.
so I really don't know that we should go much into them
No.
now. We talk about the tantric sexual techniques, which really are about preserving and cultivating energy from the root level of our storehouse of sexual energy, which is the largest storehouse of vitality in the body, and really is literally at the root of ecstatic awakening.
Yes.
And then we talk about some more mudras and bandhas and getting more advanced with that. Kachari mudra, which is a very advanced mudra involving the tongue going up with that behind the soft palate. And AYP is probably one of the most thorough resources in the world on that particular practice.
How is that?
Because it's been very secret for many centuries.
Uh-huh.
And it's just mentioned in a few scriptures, one of them being the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, which is another scripture, ancient scripture, that covers asanas and mudras and bandhas mainly. And Kachari mudra is one of those. But it's always been very difficult to find anybody to teach that. And it was somewhat popularized by Kriya Yoga over the last century and a half, but really not out in the public eye. And AYP brought it out into the public eye. I think we can take credit for that.
Yes.
And
very good.
And has detailed lessons on it and extensive support discussions in the support forums as well on the website. And then, of course, there's Samyama, which is a whole category of practice that takes inner silence and stimulates it in various directions outward through the nervous system, which is very purifying. And Samyama has some glitz associated with it because it is what produces the so-called supernormal powers, siddhis, and miracles. And we have a whole book on that, as you know, and Patanjali devotes a whole chapter in the Yoga Sutras to the Samyama and the various sutras that he suggests for producing different types of miracles. So that's always interesting reading.
Uh-huh.
But more importantly, it's a very powerful practice if it's done correctly with a good list of sutras. If you use a good list of Samyama sutras, which are the little code words that you use in the technique.
Yes.
If you have a good list of those, it really is very good for overall cultivation of the movement of inner silence through the nervous system, which is actually also, it's combining inner silence with the ecstatic nature and creating that movement of stillness out from the body. Very important technique, and we devote a lot of attention to it in AYP and have several different styles. We have core Samyama practice, and we have cosmic Samyama practice, and several other nuances that we use Samyama for. In fact, we have every weekend a global meditation that takes place that's coordinated from the AYP website,
Uh-huh.
where one of the elements of that is a healing Samyama for people who need that. And Samyama can be focused on specific individuals for healing and for dealing with problems and so on.
So what do they
Bringing
do?
more in.
Would our listeners write to you from the website to ask to be included?
Not to me. There are people that coordinate the global group meditations,
Mm-hmm.
and people who want to have healing help can go to the forums to the announcements section.
Okay.
And there's a topic under there where you can request healing assistance, and your name is added to the list of sutras that are being used for that weekend.